Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Invest Charlotte 2021 official virtual launch conference. I see there are still a lot of people coming into the room, so we will be getting started here in just a few minutes. But I would like to remind everyone that this conference is live streaming on YouTube and will be available on our YouTube channel at the close of this conference.
Mother, can you let me go? I wanna fly, but I don't wanna fall anymore. And Father, can you pull me up? I wanna fight, but it feels like my time's almost up. Sister, can you stay and talk? I know you're here, cause you were always there from the start. Baby, can you forgive what I did? I wanna love, but I can get these thoughts out my head. Who's gonna save me?
Hello, everyone. It's almost showtime. We'll be getting started here in about 3 minutes. I wanted to make a quick note that the Q&A feature will be available to the audience during the panel discussions, so please be sure to send in your questions for our panelists. Mhm.
Who's gonna save me now?
Good morning, Charlotte. My name is Abby Maloney, and I'm the President and CEO of Capital Analytics. Welcome to the second annual launch conference of our Invest Charlotte report, an in-depth analysis of what makes the region tick, where are the opportunities, and what challenges lie ahead. Thank you all for being here today. I'd like to begin today by highlighting what a remarkable year it's been. In many ways, it's been more successful than any of us could have imagined just 1 year ago when the pandemic arrived on our shores. While COVID-19 has been a tragedy of unprecedented global magnitude, we have been resilient and demonstrated that cooperation leads to success. The vaccine is the greatest example of this, and its rollout is in high gear across the country. There is finally widespread optimism. All around us, there are signs that things are getting back to a new semblance of normal. More businesses are opening. Unemployment is improving. The economy is demonstrating resilience and projected to grow overall this year. Part of that is thanks to the federal stimulus programs that have cast a safety net over small businesses. But much of that is due to the resilience of individuals and businesses and the ability to adapt and transform. Specifically here in Charlotte, the signs of revival and recovery are evident. Unemployment is trending lower, and the economic outlook for the region this year is for growth. I recently saw a headline that read, "Businesses trade out closed signs for the pandemic for help wanted signs." It's a reflection of where business community after a year of challenges is. At Capital Analytics, we're also excited to move forward, building on what became a successful year, despite everything that transpired over the last 12 months. Like so many other businesses, we saw that the pandemic had an opportunity to change things up, our ability to adapt and innovate. Business intelligence is now more vital than ever, whether it's in print, digital, or virtual conference like today. Our global subscribers and readers have never been more engaged. If people are to invest during uncertain times, they want to be even better informed, and they are coming to us to do just that. Our Invest Insights video platform, for example, has exploded. We're finding that our partners, like yourselves, want to participate, want a community connection, and want to get the message out that the world continues to move forward. We expanded our video platform to a podcast so that our readers and viewers can listen to us on the go. And we could not be more pleased with our adaptation to virtual events. Transforming our live conferences to the digital world last year was nerve-wracking, but we've discovered we have a new skill here at Capital Analytics. After 7 successful virtual events last year, we are here today with well over 600 registered attendees. So as you can see, as many businesses over the past year, the pandemic didn't slow us down, it only sped us up. And with so many of you here today, the key to that ability has been transformation. Transformation, in fact, is our adopted theme for the year and will be a central element of our discussions today as we look to the future of banking, which is particularly important for the country's #2 financial hub, innovation that is reshaping the real estate market in the region, and how innovation will help to propel Charlotte's economic growth moving forward. In all of our discussions to put together our annual report with hundreds of businesses and political leaders, a common thread is how far we've come in such a short amount of time. Advances that were expected to take years have taken months. As a community, we've transformed for the better, emerging stronger than ever. We're looking forward with an optimistic eye, knowing that we can apply the lessons learned from the past year to craft an even brighter future. I'd like to take a moment and thank the sponsors of today's event: Blumenthal Performing Arts Center, Brasfield and Gorey, Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, DPR Construction, Fifth Third Bank, Frontier Growth, JP Morgan Chase, McGuire Woods, Progressive AE, Self-Help Credit Union, Signature Consultants, and Trulient Federal Credit Union. Thank you. It is with your continued support that we can continue to bring high-level speakers and content to the Charlotte region. I would also like to recognize the team who worked tirelessly on this year's update. Chris Chapman and Felipe Rivas, you and your team truly did an amazing job. Well done. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our opening keynote, Michael Smith, the CEO of Charlotte Center City Partners. Michael, please start your camera and your audio. I see you there.
Excellent.
Wonderful. How are you doing this morning?
Great. Good to be with you. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I will let you take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the warm welcome and for the perspective that Capital Analytics has brought. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Your passion and commitment to Charlotte and to our region is such a driver for this incredible place. It is our people that set us apart from our competitors. Let me begin by acknowledging also the extraordinary challenges that cities and especially downtowns all around the world have experienced due to COVID-19. This is just such a difficult time for so many of our small businesses, entrepreneurs, frontline workers, and to those of you who've stepped up in ways to really support these important members of our community. Thank you. We find ourselves in a dramatic period of transition. Cities are restarting their engines concurrently, and that's an important point for us to remember. That is certainly the case in our center city. We are seeing an awakening, increased foot traffic, some smaller events, and visitors, residents, and employees beginning to return to our restaurants, our stores, our offices. Construction continues with major projects like the Ally Charlotte Center, the JW Marriott, both of which will be delivering this quarter, and others such as the Lowe's Technology Hub, the new Duke Energy Plaza, Lending Tree Advantage in South End, and the Honeywell headquarters at Legacy Union, all poised to come online soon. Now, new and renewed restaurants continue to open. Everything from, believe it or not, a cereal bar in Uptown's Latta Arcade to Latin American popsicle joint in South End. Baseball is back, with the Knights hosting in limited numbers to maintain social distance. Charlotte Shout, our 16-day festival of arts, music, food, and ideas, is coming back this September, and you're not going to want to miss it. This is going to be an incredible welcome back party for our community. The point is that we are powering up Center City Charlotte, and Charlotte has an incredible opportunity to differentiate itself as we enter this new chapter. This is another chance for our city to change leagues based on the quality of our strategy and the pace of our implementation. It is our belief that in a post-pandemic world, Charlotte's Center City is uniquely positioned to compete for jobs, investment, and talent. Now is the time to bet on Charlotte's spirit of resilience and innovation. We entered the pandemic from a position of real strength, coming off our most prolific decade of Center City growth in Charlotte's history, and rooted in decades of intentionality and public-private partnerships. We have $3 billion in new development in the pipeline. Institutional investors continue to subscribe to Charlotte's promise with growing investments, recognizing the unique value of this region and our urban core. Our community is making big moves with the incredible vision by Atrium Health and Wake Forest for a new medical school and innovation district. The excitement of Major League Soccer starting in less than a year, and investments in city-changing mobility infrastructure. And Charlotte excels in growing and attracting talent. 330,000 across the last decade. We believe there is a real opportunity here coming out of the pandemic. We have seen an incredible spirit of entrepreneurship in our community during this last year. The Small Business Innovation Fund that we launched in partnership with the Foundation for the Carolinas, lead investor Honeywell, and other investors, including the Knight Foundation, B of A, and Duke Energy, was just one example of this spirit. Through this fund, we were able to provide grants to 116 small businesses who wanted to use these investments to innovate. An opportunity to dig deeper with ingenuity and creativity to meet the challenging times and an eye towards the future. Well, we've got to prepare for this next decade, and these are new and defining times, a new normal of sorts. And we've been working closely with the city and the county to craft the all-in 2040 Center City Vision Plan. I am inspired by what we have heard from our community, and I could not be more excited about the values and the bold thinking that our community has brought to this effort. Charlotte has a great tradition of creating a new downtown plan every decade, looking ahead to create a blueprint for growth, development, and big moves that will define our city. Every vision plan becomes known for a few key recommendations, and this plan will be no exception. 3 themes have captured the uniqueness of this plan and the way it will boldly transform our center city. First, a commitment to equity as a value and through our actions. We are committed to building an equitable and just center city, and we continue to look toward this aspiration. We know that Charlotte's urban core has also fostered inequity, injustice, and exclusion. Previous plans have incorporated diversity and equity values, but in the 2040 plan, you will see a clear commitment to equity in everything we do through specific policies, priority actions that lead to real meaningful change. The second theme that emerged is the maturation of our center city as a collection of distinct, vibrant neighborhoods. Center City used to be just uptown. Today, it is this mosaic of incredibly discrete, unique neighborhoods that include uptown. We want to strengthen these neighborhoods and help them grow in a way that gives opportunity to as many as possible. And lastly, the third theme is big moves in transportation that create mobility networks to support these complete neighborhoods and advance our community's efforts towards sustainability. Part of what makes this plan unique is the way it responds to the experiences all of us over the last year and a half have seen. We've heard loud and clear that our community wants a center city that is welcoming, equitable, economically vibrant, culturally rich, and beloved by all. The connections that we have to this place are meaningful, and we cannot wait to deepen those bonds this summer and beyond. We know that many companies are setting their schedules for a return to office across the summer following Labor Day, and some of you have already begun bringing your teams back. Our favorite urban places have this electric pulse, and they're busy, they're highly populated, they're safe, and they're welcoming places for all. That sense of community, collaborating with colleagues, dining at a favorite restaurant, experiencing the magic of live music, is what we've all missed during this past year, and we look forward to returning with you to that magic. And that's where all of you come in. We need your help. We are powering up our center city. Charlotte is a competitive place, maybe even a little bit of a chip on our shoulder. And we want our downtown, our center city, to come back faster and stronger than our competitors, faster than Austin, Nashville, Denver. The way that happens is for all of us to show up, come and have a meal, support a small business, bring friends out to check out museums and cultural institutions, maybe a Knights game. Take a walk on the rail trail. There's so many ways you can show your support for the center city and for these small businesses to ensure that that vibrancy we love remains a part of this place. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. I'm so excited to feel the energy of our vibrant Uptown and South End as we power up, and I can't wait to join you in this great place. Have a great rest of the day, and thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your remarks, and we appreciate you being here with us today. Good morning, everyone. While I wish we were all gathered together in person today, it is truly my pleasure to be here with you virtually. For those who do not know me from last year's event, I am Jack Miller, and I'm the Regional Director at Capital Analytics, overseeing many of our ongoing projects. I would also like to add my thanks to our team and to everyone who contributed to this year's report. We're very excited, as always, for the new markets and the new reports that we are able to put out each year. I want to take just a moment to update you on our work in the region. As Abby mentioned in her opening remarks, Capital Analytics has only ramped up operations over the past 12 months. I'm delighted to announce that we have just kicked off the research for the 4th edition of our Focus Atlanta report. We are also continuing to expand in this region and are currently preparing our first editions of Invest Raleigh-Durham and Invest in Nashville. If anyone here today would like to be a part of either of these exciting new editions, please do reach out to me and/or our team. Further afield, we are also thrilled that our first editions for Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Pittsburgh will premiere this year as well. To sign up to receive any of our newsletters for these markets or a copy of our reports, please email contact@capitalaa.com or visit our website, capitalanalyticsassociates.com. Now it's my pleasure today to introduce our first panel, Financial Future, What's Next for one of the nation's preeminent banking hubs. Moderating today, this panel is Stacy Roche, partner at McGuire Woods. Stacy, if you could please turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the panelists and get the discussion started.
Hi, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us. We have an excellent panel for our discussion today. We're here to talk about the financial future of Charlotte as a banking hub. And so I had a series of questions for our panelists. We have Lee Fite, Regional President of the Mid-Atlantic region for Fifth Third Bank. We have Brent Gore, Head of Commercial Banking for the Carolinas region, JP Morgan. And we have Claudia Johnson, Charlotte Executive for the Self-Help Credit Union. Thanks, everybody. I want to start with some questions for everybody on the panel and let people jump in as they want to. The first thing we wanted to talk about was what are some positive takeaways for the financial sector, particularly locally, over this past year with everything we had to adapt to, and what are some things we could have done better? And as you're thinking about that, are there some things we could take advantage of and build on going forward, or other things that we didn't do well but we can learn from going forward as we return to some hopefully a more normal economy here? Brent, you want to?
Sure. Thank you, Stacy. It's good to be here. I think, some of the really good positive takeaways were the acceleration of trends that were in place in terms of digitization and new ways of interacting and conducting business. You think about payments, the acceleration of API development, loan application processes, loan closings, digital signatures, and the adoption of all those technologies has just been accelerated dramatically over the past year. For example, 2/3 of all mortgage applications are now taken online, which is actually 3 times the number pre-pandemic. So that's a tremendous thing that should make customer interactions with the banks more seamless, easier, quicker, and in a lot of ways safer. So I think that's one of the really big positives that have come out of the past year.
Claudia, how about you?
Yeah, Stacy, good morning.
Morning.
I will just piggyback off of Michael Smith's comments, from city partners in terms of the spirit of collaboration. That's what I saw, from the beginnings of the pandemic, to the summer protests. There was just that spirit of collaboration, that it takes a village, type mindset, here in Charlotte. So in terms of, or as an example, when you think about from a lending standpoint, there's always been, the players that have always been collaborative, but when we saw our small businesses hurting, I think that to use Brent's word, that got accelerated in terms of that spirit of cooperation and collaboration, and that, we were receiving calls, from, the Fifth Thirds of the world, the Bank of America, to name a few, that, hey, we can't get this loan done. We know that you offer smaller dollar loans. Is this something that you could work on? So that's what we saw, a lot of, again, at the beginning of the pandemic and during.
Okay. Lee, how about yourself? I think you're still muted, Lee.
Sorry about that, guys. Thank you. From a technology perspective, I would agree with what Brent shared. There were a lot of investments that we made and many others in the industry in terms of technology prior to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But what the pandemic in the last year did is it accelerated that. In our own case, half of our workforce went home in a matter of weeks. And so you had to learn to engage differently. You had to learn to collaborate differently. Some of the conversations we were having with clients, those were accelerated out of need, right? But other things that we saw, and Claudia, I think you were touching on this a little bit. We saw early on the need, people respected and valued personal relationships. We may have needed to communicate differently. And we certainly, our bank has invested heavily in digitization, and that pays dividends. But when there was a problem, when there was a concern in the community, folks wanted to talk to a person, and they wanted to talk to somebody that knew them and knew their families and knew what was going on. And we had volunteers. We had folks in all of our markets that were volunteering, thousands and thousands of employees that, in addition to their regular job, were saying, "Hey, wherever you need help, call me. I'll be there." And that was really gratifying. And the feedback that I get as I visit throughout the Carolinas is folks recognize that and they remember that. And I'm hoping we don't lose that sense of community and coming together when there's a real need as we get back to something that looks a bit more normal over the coming months.
Makes a lot of sense. I heard all of you mention advancing and sort of accelerating use of technology. I wonder if we can expand on that and talk about particular technologies and, how do you balance the quality of service, which you were just talking about, Lee, but also cybersecurity. The more, technology we use to provide these services, the more we have to worry about cybersecurity. So I wondered if you guys could comment on if you can see this still accelerating, how we can use it better in a normal economy. Do you see people kind of shrinking back from it, or do you see it accelerating and continue to be the expectation to be technology first? Maybe Claudia?
Yeah, Stacy. Technology is here with us, right? And as Brent and Lee said, it got accelerated during the pandemic. We learned early on that we needed to make sure that we gave our members access, to their monies, right, to avoid, panic situations and things of that nature. So that's where we accelerated. We had already started, creating a remote, increasing or enhancing our mobile banking, our remote services and things of that nature. That got sped up to make sure, again, members had access to things. And then in regards to cybersecurity, you look at what's going on current, with the issue with the pipeline, if you will, the ransomware attack. So cybersecurity is on the minds of our IT folks, on a daily basis. So now from a banking standpoint, we're using more two-step, verification. We are communicating more with our employees around cybersecurity, via training, where before maybe it was an annual training, now that's happening, more often so that folks can detect, some phishing scams and things of that nature.
Makes sense. How about you, Lee?
Yeah, so, from a technology perspective, again, prior to the pandemic, we were already working on ways to interact with customers, at a time and place of their choosing. And so whether that be account opening online or offering new products and ways to transmit information to customers in a way that in the past, perhaps a customer had an entire staff to handle that, and we're able to help them do that electronically. Payments, managed solutions. We partner with many organizations, including some that are based here in Charlotte, around serving clients and bringing more innovative ideas and solutions to them. And so that certainly accelerated over the last year, and that's going to be a big part of how all of us do business going forward. I don't think it takes the place of a personal relationship. What it does is it complements how you do business, and it just makes it more efficient. That's been a big part of how we have invested. We've made significant investments throughout the Carolinas. We'll continue to do that, but a lot of that is around technology and acquiring, creative technology that will support some of our other initiatives. As it relates to cybersecurity, I would imagine if you talked to CEOs in the industry, they would all tell you that if not their biggest concern, one of the top two or three. And all of us that on the panel today, we were with organizations that spend a lot of time and make a lot of capital investment around cybersecurity. You just never get called up there. And we test daily, we train daily, we work with customers, we try to educate them. We have teams that will go out and meet with customers to help them understand how to be a little better at managing their own cybersecurity. But that's an ongoing battle and something that will take a larger share of investment as we go forward.
Yep, I think the gas outages in Charlotte show how temporary security can be. So, Brent, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple things that both Claudia and Lee said, and that is one, I think the acceleration of the trend is not going to change. To answer that question, it's going to continue, and in several ways, it actually helps because a lot of times these transactions can be made more safely than historical transactions. Probably the largest source of fraud, which is not necessarily cybersecurity, is actually checks. So digitization of payments is a real positive as it relates to fraud. But on the cybersecurity side, clearly on all of our minds in North Carolina, as you just mentioned, and Claudia mentioned with the pipeline. But those types of attacks, whether they be ransomware or other, have been growing in prevalence over the last decade or more, and have been an issue and a challenge that our clients and our companies have been facing. And the way we think about that is really kind of in three buckets. It's education, it's preparation, and it's monitoring. On the education side, you heard Claudia talk about the annual testing. We educate our employees, we encourage them, we share information with our clients to help them educate themselves, both on the consumer side and on the commercial side and the company side. But you've got to educate your employees, you've got to educate yourselves. And then we feel like it's a responsibility that we have, because we have such a broad view across the world of what's actually going on and what bad actors are doing, what new tactics and strategies they're employing to commit acts of crime. And so as we see these things, we can provide real-time information to our clients to help them protect themselves. So that's the education piece. The preparation piece is the ongoing work that we do, process, policy, procedure, and the like, to help prevent, cybersecurity attacks. And we push this information out constantly to both consumer customers as well as commercial clients. But it is clearly something on all of our minds in the Carolinas right now, obviously, and it's something that we've been thinking about and working on and facing for quite some time. But I do not think that the fear of that is going to slow, the trends of technology. I think those trends are fundamental. They're not changing, but it will create additional challenges that, companies, IT professionals, that we'll all have to face.
Agreed. Thank you. One more point, just for the whole group, and then I have a couple of individual questions, but I wanted to touch on sort of the growing ecosystem of finance. It's not just traditional banks. We've got credit unions and fintechs, especially during the pandemic, have been much more active through PPP and other sort of government-backed and other events to try to help, frankly, everyone prop up their communities. But I wonder, have you seen growing collaboration yet among the fintechs and the credit unions and the banks, or are we still sort of three silos of possibility that haven't quite figured out how to work together? Brent, you're laughing, so maybe I'll go to you.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So we have seen growing collaboration, and you're 100% on target there, and we see it in all aspects. And I think as we think about, from our perspective, one of the really positives that came out of the past year was, our collaboration that we developed with the minority-owned deposit institutions. And so, as part of what's been happening in the past year, is we've evaluated the situation and what's going on in the world. What are ways we can help? And so one of the things we did is we decided to partner with MDIs across the country. We made $40 million. This is, has been announced. You've probably seen it, where we made a $40 million investment in several MDIs. Fortunately for us here in the Carolinas, one of them was actually here, which is Mechanics and Farmers over in Durham. And so that was a one-time capital infusion, but we wanted to do more than that in our collaboration with those institutions. And so we've also created a product, the Empower Money Market Funds. And so that's a product that we're going to distribute, and our MDIs that we partner with are going to be able to distribute. It's going to allow them to provide something to their client base of value, as well as help them to generate a new source of ongoing revenue. And we hope that this is just the beginning of that collaboration. We hope that this grows and continues into the future as well. So that's a collaboration with that financial institution, that group of financial institutions, but there are many collaborations with the fintechs, across the board. I'm sure, our competitors and our friends at Fifth Third and other financial institutions are doing the same thing. But there is definitely a lot of interest in that world for all of us. And, the fintechs, a lot of technology comes out of that ends up being fundamental to the industry. And so we're definitely collaborating with them.
Lee or Claudia?
Yeah, I would just touch on that, and I agree with everything that Brent shared there. Speaking, I grew up in Charlotte, so I have a lot of history and a lot of respect for the companies that we see here, and those that have been here for a long time. You would see competing banks come together to solve issues that have existed for a long time, whether that be support around bond initiatives or affordable housing, arts as is going on currently. Michael Smith, the folks at the Foundation for the Carolinas, there are a lot of great leaders in the city that come together and bring together a lot of the financial institution leadership that would normally be competitors, but we work for a common good. So that's pretty normal. Fifth Third across the country, we work with other banks. We invest in other organizations that may compete with us on a day-to-day basis. We recognize there's a need, and resources are not always available in every community the way that you would want. They're not always available at an individual level the way that you would always want. And so when we see opportunities to support minority-owned organizations or small business, those that may be in a rural area as opposed to a faster growth area, the way that we get to enjoy in Charlotte, we work with those organizations. From a fintech perspective, I would tell you that partnership is very real. I think you find that a lot of the fintechs right now have some very creative customer-facing products or ideas. They don't always have the back office solutions completely built out. And so there's an opportunity for organizations like Fifth Third or with Claudia or Brent's organizations to partner with those fintechs to find something that we know customers would like and enjoy, but we have a bit more scale. We may be able to partner with them to help them build that out a little more. And so those are the types of partnerships and investments that we look at on a daily basis. And I don't see that changing. I think that's healthy for all of us.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm sorry, Brent. Stacey, if I can just add, we as a community development financial institution, we're beneficiaries, of the collaboration and partnership, that both Brent and Lee talked about. They focused on the MDIs, but as a CDFI, we're beneficiary because of the membership that we serve. Typically, underbanked, type of populations, disadvantaged type communities, communities of color. So we receive, some of that support from them to do our work in terms of providing access, providing equity, type situations. I think about from a home lending standpoint, which is one of the big things that we do here at Self-Help. We have a secondary market, program where we partner again with some of the bigger banks where we created a portfolio product, to get more, women, minorities into home ownership, where maybe subsidy is needed, to provide down payment. Indoor life has happened, so maybe the credit scores are not at the level where they need to be. So we have those products, that we do, ourselves, but we know it's a global issue. So then that's where we reach out to the JP Morgans, the Fifth Thirds, and they start making those similar type of loans. And then we, through our secondary market, program, purchase those loans off their books. So that, again, we're providing that ecosystem where more people get into home ownership.
Great, thank you. It's good news. I want to stop for a moment and bring in a question from our audience. We had a question about the growing interest and influence of cryptocurrencies and how you see that impacting your offerings, your strategies, just banking going forward as the crypto market kind of grows almost exponentially right now. Claudia, do you guys see any influence of crypto?
Yeah, we have not. We've been seeing it, Stacey, just from the standpoint of potential investors. So as I mentioned, the individuals that we typically bank, low to mod individuals. So we actually just started a financial center here in Charlotte where we do one-on-one financial coaching. So I'm a certified financial planner myself, so I know I've been involved in some conversations with individuals who are coming to us, for counseling, where we're trying to help them with some of their financial life goals. So obviously that process starts with the budgeting process, and then some of the things that they're talking about early on is that, hey, what about this Bitcoin? I need to invest in Bitcoin, and they don't have an emergency fund set up. So we talk and have those conversations around the financial pyramid, and that Bitcoin is at that top from a speculative investment. Let's start working on the foundations, first, and get that life happens funds or that emergency fund for you set up. An automated savings program. Let's look at, hey, what kind of retirement programs do you have at work? Let's make sure that we're maximizing, those retirement programs. And then if you have additional disposable income, now let's talk about, cryptocurrency.
Right. Lee or Brent?
I would tell you that we have a lot of discussions around it. Probably similar to Claudia, most of those discussions come more from investors. Mm-hmm. What does the future of that look like? I think that there's clearly a lot of investment. There's a lot of interest in that and a form of investment. In terms of how disruptive it may be, I'm not going to speculate there. We are thinking about how to support customers who may want to hold those types of investments. But in terms of investing in a platform to allow folks to actively trade in something like that, in terms of how it's impacting our wholesale clients, we're going to take a more conservative approach there. Claudia talked about the investment pyramid. Being diversified is important. Managing your risks appropriately is important. And from a bank's perspective, we have obligations to know our customers, to know where funds are coming and going, and to be able to just be responsible in those actions. And so I think from my perspective, we're a bit early in that. And so we're gonna tread lightly and see how some of those developments take hold.
Yeah, Stacy, I would agree with what both Claudia and Lee said. I mean, I'm not an expert on cryptocurrencies, as Lee mentioned. The way we're approaching is, and you may have seen last week, our CEO spoke on this a little bit last week in the public eye. We're trying to figure out ways to provide customers, what they want, to Lee's point, but do so in a prudent manner. And so, I think that is really where we are around cryptocurrency. I think it's almost impossible at this point for any of us to predict, what it will ultimately look like in terms of, the ability to transact commerce using cryptocurrency, how widespread that will be, which currencies will be the ones that prevail or most prevalent in that field, in that regard. But it is definitely something that's interesting. And if you have college age or early 20s children, I promise you they are following it on Reddit and everywhere else. It is very much in their world. So it's interesting. It's here. And I think, from our perspective and what you've seen our CEO talk about, the technology behind cryptocurrency is much more interesting to us, and that's blockchain. And we believe that is real, and that is going to be impactful and change things over time as well. And hearkening back to our cybersecurity discussion, it's an area where blockchain can be very beneficial as it relates to cybersecurity. So I think that's more what we're focused on as an organization. One, how can we use the underlying technology and what that's going to look like in the future? And then two, providing something in a prudent manner for our clients that they desire and they're asking for.
Well, we're running up on time a little bit. We've got about 8 minutes left, so or a little less than that now. I was going to combine, I was originally going to ask each of you a separate question, but I'll combine it into one and try to get your response. Just generally looking, Claudia, for instance, your organization actually jumped right in, feet first in the PPP and ended up doing over 180 million in PPP loans, 1,300 businesses, including quite a number of minority-owned businesses in Charlotte region. And so for all of you, but starting with Claudia, I wonder, how do we see this progressing? PPP is now wrapping up, but we still have a lot of small businesses, I think, at best treading water out there. And so how do we see sort of the financial institutions being able to help small business going forward outside of a government structured emergency program? Where do we see that going next?
No, absolutely. Yeah, Stacey. Yeah, when we first heard about the PPP program, and then obviously seeing everything going on with the economy, said as an institution, that's probably the best place for us to be to provide that bridge. So we think about that PPP as a bridge. To your comments, to get through this pandemic. So that was first and foremost for us. And then, as a CDFI, knew that our focus needed to be, on the smaller businesses, the minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and then nonprofits, specifically, to help them get through. Because when we think back to that first draw of the PPP, some of those individuals got left out, so that's where that became our primary focus. And we're glad we did that, because there were some examples of some businesses, that and organizations here in Charlotte, some nonprofits that do some great work, here in our community, that without those resources would have had to close. And one that comes to mind, they were providing, rent assistance, to some of our neighbors. So if you just imagine that nonprofit did not have the resources, what kind of challenge it would have been in our community. So fast forward now to your point in terms of, we built that bridge, and now it's all about recovery, now. So we're starting some recovery, lending programs, at our shop, to provide, some resources, to some businesses that are here. They had to pivot, and that pivot actually, has worked out for them. So now they need some additional capital, to enhance or expand, what they did when they pivoted. So we're starting to provide some resources around from a recovery standpoint. And then here recently, we partnered with another, CDFI in the city of Salisbury and Statesville specifically, where that CDFI is able to provide some micro loans, because we do small business loans. Our minimum loan size is about $25,000, which is low compared to JP Morgan and Fifth Third, but still we found that there's some small businesses, mom and pops, that they need $1,000 to $15,000 just to continue to prop themselves up. So we're excited about this partnership to be able to provide these micro, loans, to those businesses.
That's great. And we've got about 3 minutes left for Lee and Brent. And I wonder if you can expand on that, and also particularly the opportunity for growth where people who are in underbanked, underserved communities have gained access into the financial system through PPP and other programs. How do we expand that and keep that going and make that part of our development in our communities going forward?
Yeah, Stacey, I'll go quick so Lee has some time. We were a huge participant. Obviously, we were the number one PPP lender. I think we did $41 billion in PPP loans, which is great, and we should have. I think going forward, we see a couple things. One, Claudia mentioned, recovery is ongoing, and we're seeing great resilience in the loan portfolio. So companies are doing better and recovering better. Then going forward, you've seen our $30 billion commitment to our Path Forward initiative, and that includes, funding for small businesses. It includes funding for affordable housing. It includes those things, but it also includes a commitment. And you've probably seen this as well, our branch expansion, but we've committed over 30% of those branches in low to moderate income areas and address those banking deserts and address those needs. And our branches, we're one of few banks that are expanding and building branches, and it's a little counterintuitive to a lot of people, particularly when we've talked about technology. But we view our branches almost as like a community center. Historically, branches were primarily transaction oriented. You can still go in and do a transaction, but we really see it as a place for education, a place for gathering, a place to facilitate philanthropy, and a place to facilitate volunteerism. And so we want it to be a resource to the community that's kind of multifaceted. And so that's the way we're thinking about that going forward, and how we continue to, provide the assistance and the help and the capital that those communities need.
Lee? Lee, I think you're muted. Oh, nah, can't hear you. Tell you what we'll do, because we're running out of time, Lee. I'm gonna just a quick question just to wrap up to Brent and Claudia. And Lee, if you get your sound on, then please jump in. If there's one thing, Brent or Claudia, that you want to leave this group with in terms of looking forward in a sentence or two for what we see as the future of kind of the Charlotte financing in the next few years, what would those be?
Yeah, you touched on it as well as Brent, in just the continuation. Again, we started the conversation about this collaboration. Michael Smith talked about helping vulnerable communities and creating equity. So that just needs to continue. So I like the narrative that's out there right now that it's different than what it's been in the past. And I think folks are looking to capitalize on that moment. So that's what I'm most excited about, is that, we're poised to really capitalize on this moment to make sure that we are creating equity situation for all of our communities.
And Brent?
Yes. What I would say is, Charlotte is uniquely positioned from both a banking, entrepreneurial and fintech perspective, to be able to fuel local, state, national growth even. And really what we just need to do is to Claudia's point, we just need to continue to foster the growth of those communities and to make sure that there's broad-based participation in that growth, so that the recovery includes all communities, all businesses, all industries. And I think that we're on a great pathway to do that. And everybody just needs to kind of keep their shoulder to the plow, so to speak, to make sure that we're successful in that.
And Lee, let's see if we got your sound back. Nope. Lee says, yes, you're all right. Sorry, Lee, we're still not getting your sound. I know. Well, in any event, that caps off, right, our entire experience, right? And when
right. You're muted, yeah.
So, well, I want to thank this panel. I know we're slightly over by a minute here, but thank you, gentlemen. I think this has been a really great discussion to kick off the meeting, and I appreciate everybody joining in.
If all of our panelists and the moderator could please hold for a second and smile, we're going to take a picture. Perfect. All right. Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Max.
Stacy.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Stacy, Cloudy, Lee, Brent. Thank you for being with us today and for that discussion. We appreciate it. We had a couple questions just about, again, our contact information for some of our new and upcoming reports. Again, that information you can write directly to contact@capitalaa.com. You can visit our website at capitalanalyticsassociates.com, or feel free to email me directly at jmiller@capitalaa.com. As a reminder as well, all registered attendees today will receive complimentary access to read the new edition of Invest Charlotte digitally. So look out for an email that will be sent out after today's event. Also, we are currently live streaming on our YouTube page, where this event will also sit for anyone that would like to revisit or share these great discussions around. On our YouTube page, you will not only find this event, but our Invest Insights video platform as well, where you can hear more from many of the region's leaders who have joined us here today. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce a fantastic partner to Invest Charlotte, Kim Eagle, County Manager for Gaston County. Kim is here today to say a few words about the opportunities in Gaston County, and will then introduce our real estate and development panel. Kim, if you could make sure you're unmuted, I'm going to turn it over to you to take it away.
Good morning. I believe I'm unmuted if you all can hear me. Welcome virtually to Gaston County, and thank you to the folks at Capital Analytics for the invitation today. So I'm Kim Eagle, as was mentioned, and I've been the manager here in Gaston County for almost 2 years, more with the pandemic than without, which is really interesting. But being able to participate in events like the launch conference today is really wonderful. And when I say that, it's really exciting to be able to take time to take input from the best and brightest, both public sector and private sector. And that really fits very naturally with our vision here in Gaston. And that vision really is very simply to leave no stone unturned when it comes to strengthening relationships and using partnerships to grow the region. We talk often about claiming our place in the region here in Gaston. And like everyone, we've had to adapt, we've had to innovate, we've really had to come together over this past year to support community and business. And resiliency has really become our mantra here. So in the early stages of the pandemic and the shutdown, our Economic Development Commission was very intentional about working with existing companies to ensure, first of all, they understood their essential service status so they could continue to operate in somewhat of a normal fashion. Our health department has been phenomenal, and they meet monthly with our county association of manufacturers. And this has really been an exceptional partnership. We've tried to help make sure that our manufacturers and our businesses have information that's accurate about the pandemic, and now information around vaccination assistance. We set up a hotline really early in the pandemic, so citizens and businesses alike could get information on assistance and get questions answered. And then we did some really specific allocations of funds to help the community. We made about $500,000 available to small businesses through a loan program that really helped folks keep their doors open and stay afloat during the pandemic. And then in addition to that, our board allocated $1 million to help our residents with some bills and some issues in some key areas, things like food assistance and rental assistance. So in addition to all of that local support, we also really stayed focused on implementing our vision, the vision of the board, the vision of our Economic Development Commission, and we landed some really significant projects when we look back over the last 15 months, which is really quite phenomenal. So some of you may have heard about our Apple Creek Corporate Center. That's a business park that we're in the process of developing. It's 325 acres, and it's really focused on recruiting manufacturing companies. We're about 50% complete in that effort, and we already have one building under construction. We are a finalist for 3 other projects that would go into the Apple Creek Park. In addition, we have the Gateway 85 project. It's about 400 acres. It's a warehouse project. North Point from Kansas City is developing that project, and they already have almost 1 million square feet of spec space under construction. A few other projects of note just over the course of the last 15 months. Equus has broken ground on a 300 square foot building in Kings Mountain. Tribec is starting construction on 600 square feet. That's in Belmont. Trinity Capital Partners recently announced their plans for a 600 square foot building in Gastonia. And then I want to point out specifically some other really exciting work that's happening as well. The city of Gastonia will officially open their new $25 million ballpark later this month. And that is the centerpiece of what we are calling the Fuse District. That's a major revitalization plan for the downtown area of Gastonia. It will have a brewery, it will have a 5-story apartment complex, and it will also include the conversion of a former mill into some apartments. We're really excited about that, what that can bring to the downtown area. And then in addition, the Chronicle Mill in Belmont is also being converted and expanded into apartments and live-work units. So we have that moving us forward in terms of local projects, while we also recognize that our county is a big part of the recovery effort in the Charlotte region. So we're doing our part to provide business parks where companies can locate. We believe that will help Apple Creek, for example, in recruiting e-commerce and logistics companies. It will give a competitive location for manufacturers. And we're finding that it's really very appealing to foreign companies. We are recruiting foreign direct investment to the county, which helps with expanding the global community, but we're also really finding it helps us expand our talent pool, which is a critical need for us. So in closing, I'll say that when we bring together business and government, just like we're doing today, it really positions us in the most optimal way for the future. And that's really what it's all about. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our next panel, How Pandemic-Born Innovation is Reshaping and Influencing Real Estate Development. That panel will be moderated by Judy Wishnick, Charlotte Market Executive for Truliant Federal Credit Union. Take it away.
Thank you, Kim. And wow, there's a lot of exciting things going on in Gastonia, as well as our entire Charlotte region. So it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you this morning. I am Judy Wishnick, and I am the Charlotte Market Commercial Executive with Truliant Federal Credit Union. And I'm excited to be here with this amazing panel of 3 rock stars in real estate. And they're going to share their thoughts on how the pandemic-born innovation is reshaping and influencing real estate development. Joining us today is Zach Panier, Business Unit Leader with DPR Construction, Michael Bird, Regional Vice President and Division Manager with Brassfield and Gorey, and Wes Jones, Managing Principal with Progressive AE. So gentlemen, let's get started. How did your business work to develop new standards and best practices during the pandemic? And how have these been a benefit to your operations in the current economic recovery process? Zach, do you want to start us off?
Sure, thanks, Judy. I'll dig in here. And I got to share a little bit of this in this panel last year, but I think we've really built upon this. And so one of our 4 company strategies over the last 5 years has been around data, and how do we utilize data to help drive and influence decisions, help connect with our customers, help make sure that we are helping innovate in what we do as a construction firm. But when the pandemic hit, it was really all about protecting our people and protecting our projects, and in turn, being able to support our customers in what they were doing and making sure we had continuous operations. And so I think it's the combination of how in the last panel and some of the keynote we've already heard, how the pandemic accelerated those things. We went from crisis mode to how do we make sure we're doing all the things we need to do to stabilize our business, to how do we utilize data to help inform our customers in a bigger way about the impacts, whether it be supply chain, whether it be the health and wellness of the employees on their site. There are a myriad of factors there. And so we saw really this crossroad of the things we've been working on strategically to equip ourselves with, never miss using a good crisis to accelerate what you're trying to do. And so I think that's really been the punchline for us. And we become a better business as a result of what's happened through the pandemic.
That's awesome. Michael, how about you and your company?
I agree. I think similar to the Great Recession, is actually you have these things in your careers that kind of push things that you're working on and make them become a lot more to the forefront. We looked obviously at safety and how to not only save for our workers, our subcontractors, our clients, and so forth. That was a big push. We also focused a lot on communication, internal communication. How do you, as a company, as a job, as an office, communicate what is going on with this pandemic, from a daily, weekly, monthly? And I think that has certainly progressed into better communication as a company and even as an industry. I know Zach and several GCs, DPR and all the companies, we had this big coalition, and we talked weekly through the early parts of the pandemic about what can we do as a group to better communicate, to make sure that what one GC is saying is the same as another GC is saying. So we spent a lot of time with that. And there was a lot of great things that came out of just being collaborative and learning what each company does. And I think third was really project execution. How can we be better at executing a project given a lot of those constraints that came with COVID and innovation, prefabrication, just learning how to do things differently really pushed our company as well kind of into new territory, but exciting territory for us as well.
Awesome. Wes.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. Good morning to everybody. I would echo, what Zach and Michael said. It's really been an accelerator for us. So our challenge was a couple of areas. One was recruiting and retention. In our business in the design field, mentoring and growing that younger staff coming out of school is extremely important. And I think what we did is a lot, probably 3-time-fold intentional communication. Using technology when we couldn't be in the office at all, which for us was only about a 10 or 11 week period. And now we've been in the folks that feel comfortable coming in ever since that period. But we have done a lot of hiring and onboarding in the last 6 months, starting fourth quarter of 20. And so we've had to learn, how do we bring people in, make them feel comfortable, part of the community. I think it's also been, how do we use technology, kind of echoing what Zach said, to deliver to our clients in an environment like this. And so a lot of initiatives that we were already underway with internally, we had a program that we branded as Strategic Foresight, where we're looking at a dozen different impactors from technology, Internet of Things, so on and so forth. And how do we turn that around and use it to deliver to our clients in a way that we never had before? So we've gone through complete design processes with clients, completely virtually, present their projects to them, have them understand what they are, have them approved, move forward into construction. And so it's just been a really interesting, but I think fruitful and will make us a better firm, I would agree, going forward.
That's great. That's awesome. So Michael, how have the challenges stemming from the pandemic shifted certain types of real estate development projects here in the Charlotte region?
I think we have seen, the healthcare market continues to be strong. One of the things we learned in the pandemic is our frontline workers in the healthcare industry are essential. I think the pandemic brought to light a lot of things that healthcare systems can do differently, and will certainly, be incredible as we move forward. But we've seen a big push in the healthcare market, both in Charlotte and in the Carolinas. We've seen a big multifamily push. We're very fortunate in Charlotte through all of this that people want to move to our city, as you've heard through the rest of the panel. A lot of people are coming to our city, and so infrastructure, multifamily places for these people to live. We've also seen a big push, obviously, in industrial, e-commerce. If anybody's like my family, I think my wife had an Amazon package or 5 on the doorstep every day during the pandemic. So that industry has exploded. And so, like other things, you start to see people scramble to really be able to get, involved with that. And so for us as a company, we have 14 market sectors. So fortunately, we've been pretty resilient and able to kind of bounce through some of this. The government side, the Department of Defense, there's a lot of projects in that sector truly gaining momentum nationally and also regionally. So it's encouraging to see what market sectors are still strong. I mean, there's some that are certainly, from a hospitality standpoint, even some retail is taking some major abuse, but we're seeing a lot of those other projects. And I think to what Wes and some other panels said earlier, you're seeing companies come to this city. So we hope that continues to grow the commercial market as well, because there's a lot of people that want to relocate or grow their presence here in the Carolinas and Charlotte. For us, that's exciting.
I agree. As we do a lot of commercial real estate lending, and we're seeing a lot of the same thing and excited about the growth of Charlotte. Wes, what are you seeing?
Well, we're headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we have about 230 folks. So we work across about 9 different sectors. And so it's really, I think, as Michael ran down, it's kind of different in each market sector. We're certainly experiencing the boom in multifamily, but we've had to go back and completely redesign and rethink projects relative to COVID and what that means for amenities and even unit design. In industrial, that's been super strong. We're heavily involved in the last mile center boom and rollout with a client that Michael named earlier. And so we've certainly seen that. We have our eye on cold storage, what's going to happen with that now that we're talking about fresh and cold and not just dry. And then learning and higher education, the rethink of the classroom, the hybrid online versus in-person classroom. Workplace has certainly been, a challenge, and helping companies rethink what hybrid means to them. There's definitely no one size fits all, but across all of them, and really Zach and Michael could speak to it better, but seeing the shortage in building supplies and the increase in costs, we've seen that affect every sector. And it's having a really direct and immediate impact on the go, no go for projects and looking at alternative means. So it's having a big effect, no doubt about it. And we just are tracking it and adjusting to it and trying to help each client in each market sector kind of navigate those waters.
Yeah, those are all really good points, especially about the materials. There's definitely a shortage as someone who's trying to do a project and it's not getting done right now. So, Zach, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think I'll build upon what both Wes and Michael have shared, right? I mean, we've seen hospitality stop. Those projects that were already underway and were well funded, those have continued to carry on. The commercial market has just hit pause, but some larger institutions continue to move ahead with their development plans. And so it's a little bit hit and miss there, but it does feel like there's more excitement, more energy, more momentum with new organizations moving to the region, but also developers that are not Charlotte centric, that are coming in from other markets, as we're kind of a middle market compared to some of the larger cities. That folks are moving here and they're wanting to build buildings in this town, which is a really great indicator. But I think what Wes hit on around supply chain is a big deal. My personal opinion is that it's market driven. It's all of the organizations that feed supplies to our industry, have all ramped up at different times, and they've gone through their own challenges. You heard that through the banking panel before us. And we, we're fortunate enough to have been looking at supply chain through a DEI lens, starting back a few years ago, but we've also used the crisis as an opportunity to expand our supply chain management nationally, and what that looks like, and be able to get a better read on what's happening. Because a lot of our customers are looking at us saying, tell us when we should start this project to be able to control our cost, right? And that's a skill I don't have. I don't know if Michael has it, but it's a crystal ball. But I think as an industry, we're trying to use data to help us model these things in a way that can give us the best chance at holding and maintaining budgets, while realizing that as the economy ramps back up, not everyone is ready to deal with what they need to deal with in a way where you can produce predictable, reliable results. And so it's a big challenge for all of us as we move forward.
So we had a question from the audience that fits right in with what we're talking about right now. They asked, do you think this might be a time for prefab or modular construction to gain more market share than before? Zach, you want to start with that?
I think it's an absolute, right? I think, similar to what we talked about around data and around technology, is prefab has been moving this way. And I think the pandemic has really made it here to stay. It's working with folks like Wes and the rest of our design partners and our customers around how do you design for prefab, which I think is a different way of our industry thinking. But we're fortunate to have arms of our business that manufacture components for buildings. We're also working with Atrium and our partnership here locally, both around how do we bring folks from the Crescent, create workforce development for diverse community and upward mobility. While also, not everyone wants to go work in construction. People think construction's kind of a dirty, ugly job. But if we can bring people that maybe aren't excited about that and bring them into a manufacturing environment and teach them a skill and a trade, and also help us solve some of the supply chain issues and manufacture either components or systems here locally, we're starting to make a difference. But what I'd say, Judy, is we've just started this journey, and it's something that the same as we came together around the pandemic, we're also going to have to solve this not as individual businesses, but as a community of practice as well.
Yeah, a lot of collaboration going on. Michael, do you have a perspective on that?
No, I totally agree. I think, we've got to learn how to work smarter. We've got to be able to look at labor shortages and I think a great point by Zach. I mean, part of our industry and our society is really embracing the diverse workforce and bringing other companies into the opportunity. One of the great ways to do that is to, it's hard to take a big healthcare project that's $200-300 million and go look at some minority companies and say, hey, I want to give you a big piece of this. You've never done it before, but I'm going to stick you out there. And I think prefab gives them an opportunity to partner with other companies to work, as Zach said, in a manufacturing environment and really give them a chance to learn that trade and that skill. But we have to prefab. I mean, if we're trying to reduce the amount of labor on our job sites to what we learned through the pandemic and trying to manage, instead of having 400 people on a job site, you try and have 300 so you can manage those. Prefab is that way to do that, and it gives us a chance to improve quality, to improve schedule. As Zach also mentioned, our industry is changing to be better at reducing waste, and so this is certainly it's been going on for a while, but as we all said, this has accelerated the desire for prefab. And so we're prefabbing several things as a company, different components of jobs, like Zach's company is. I think you're going to see construction continue to build with prefabrication for many reasons, not just because of maybe what we thought it was before. And the pandemic has certainly brought that to light pretty quickly.
Thank you. Wes, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with what Zach and Michael are saying. From our side of it, on the design side, we've got clients and developers who may have been building a certain way their entire sort of career, and they know those numbers, they know how those systems work, but this whole environment with the shortage in labor and construction materials, I think, has accelerated the thought process around prefabricated systems and different ways of building, in a number of sectors. And I think it's incumbent upon us as designers to be familiar and really kind of fluent in those systems and understand what the pros and cons are. And the pros and cons, I'm sure Zach and Michael would agree, are shifting and changing, because as that supply chain gets affected and manufacturing gets affected, something that wasn't appropriate yesterday or maybe affordable and it didn't pencil, all of a sudden now it's looking very different. So we have to be able to speak, I guess, multiple languages now, where we might have just been really comfortable with the one that we've always known, up until this point.
So changing the topic just a little bit, there's been a lot of conversations about what's the future of corporate office space. And Wes, I'd love to hear from an architectural design and engineering perspective, how you've seen the demand of office space shift and how your organization is working to guide this transformation.
Yeah, we, like most everybody, our journey started with a close look in the mirror at ourselves, the rethink of how we can use our space safely and deal with the immediate situation. And I think, like, our main mission with our clients, I think, has been around what does the hybrid office look like for them, meaning folks that are working online or remote or coming in a hotel situation, or folks that want to be full-time back in the office. And then how do we do what we do, create culture and maintain culture? And a lot of the two focus areas I think have shifted a lot are, lead and sustainability. While it's still very prevalent and it's part and parcel of what we do, that shift, I think, with the building codes catching up to what LEED was trying to accomplish, I think there's been a big shift into well building and well environments. And on the engineering side, that involves HVAC systems, it involves building information management systems, and people want to know, and they want to be able to interact with their office spaces in a way that they haven't before. Amenities that may be present in the building or whatever, how do I get to them without necessarily, I can order a cup of coffee, from a store downstairs. And then, so I think the wellness is a major shift, and I think the other shift is recruiting and retention. I mean, it's gonna now that the world has seen that we all can do many of our jobs remotely, that we didn't necessarily know that, and businesses and office occupying groups didn't have to do it that way. Well, now we've seen that world, and so it's going to be really impossible to go back. Well, I don't think we have a single client that's not considering some form of hybrid, going forward. It's just, what is that, and how does it work for our business so that we can still produce our best work? So it's interesting, and there was definitely fall off, last March dramatically in the workplace, but we've seen it come back quite a bit. We're not seeing wholesale erase the chalkboard, rethink the office, rebuild it generally from our clients. But we are seeing everybody rethink what can they do in terms of how do people work, what kind of interaction spaces are there, how changeable can we make it, and who amongst us is going to be in the office every day and who isn't. So it's a really interesting time, I think, in workplace. Stay tuned, because it's not worked out yet.
I agree. Michael and Zach, what do the two of you think about that?
I'll jump. I mean, I agree that we have not seen wholesale changes. We are certainly asked as part of the pricing of these projects to look at a lot of different options, both from a standpoint of combating some of the supply chain issues to also talking about, what are new best practices for workspace. So, we're seeing as you mentioned, the amenities and a lot of these buildings that we're looking at, everybody's certainly looking at ways to want to keep their workforce in the space and make them comfortable, happy in there. But you're also seeing, as if technology wasn't big enough, companies are getting more and more technology as we try and figure out how to work from home and office. Can you be as efficient in one as the other? And so it's a little bit of everybody's kind of working their way through it. And I give a lot of these owners credit. They're really embracing, not completely changing, but trying to learn how to do things better. And that's exciting, because there's some new technology innovations we're going to see in our workforce or in our workplace.
Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add here is it's really kind of starts with a mindset shift in how we've traditionally worked as an enterprise and as a business. Being physically present is fundamental to our culture. It's fundamental to the cultures of those folks that work and live in a creative office environment. The Googles, what Duke Energy is doing around their workplace of the future. That is of paramount priority to them, but it's also giving people choices, right? And so it's this interesting confluence of how all these things come together in a way to give people more options, more choices through the use of technology. But it's all about finding that kind of grand compromise. As we develop big projects of scale, historically we had done those through a collaborative big room approach, where you bring in your architect and your trade partners and your customer, and you work together. And we've had to move those things to 100% virtual world. And there have been some struggles and some challenges through that, as everyone has figured out the virtual world. But it's, how do you have the right balance of both that creates connection, creates culture, and utilizes technology, right? And I think we're searching, as that pendulum is swinging back and forth, to, is there a middle point? Is it skewed more towards one side or the other? I think, as Wes said, time will tell as we write this chapter together.
Good point. So the title of this panel is How Pandemic-Born Innovation is Reshaping and Influencing the Real Estate Development. Let's start with Michael this time. What would you identify as the most exciting innovation stemming from the challenges presented by the pandemic? And how do you feel it will shape future development in Charlotte?
I think that one, the exciting part is we're in the city where we're seeing we're a viable destination for a lot of people as they change their focus and where they live and they work their place. So first of all, it's exciting to see the different industries, the different amount of work coming here. It's interesting to what Zach said about, in the industry of construction, you generally, a lot of that is face to face, it's person to person, it's doing things. And so, it's exciting to see what we've all figured out how to do in a year and a half, a year and 3 or 4 months. And as Wes said, I think we all have learned that we can do things differently. Now it's figuring out which one of those enhance what we do in our industry, which ones are not ideal for certain industries. I mean, we still fight a little bit of this panel of being able to interact with subcontractors and owners and face to face and see how people, are doing things. But I think the technologies that are now being used, I mean, some of the drone and robotic technologies we use to do things that used to be people, one, that to be safer, one, to be able to be not have as many personnel on the job site. That's exciting. It's pushed us in that direction. And I think, we're gonna really learn how to use all of these experiences to get better. I mean, I feel like as an industry, we came out of the Great Recession better than we went into it. I think we're going to come through this pandemic better than we went into it. And, I think it's just opened a lot of eyes to what are some of the great things that we can do as an industry, as construction, as real estate. So I feel like my opinion is the real estate market in Charlotte is strong, continues to be strong. And, we're kind of excited to hang on for the ride ahead.
Great, thank you. Wes, what do you think?
Well, it's sort of a subset to some degree, but I think this way that we've all learned to communicate virtually, so Zoom is a version of that, but I think we're going to see the ability to develop and envision remotely enhance dramatically. We have in our office, all of our leadership group has a set of goggles on our desk, and we're having meetings virtually where I have an avatar and you have an avatar, and we're talking together and having board meetings, mainly in service of being able to interact that way with our clients and get really comfortable with that. So where development maybe was, do you have an invitation into the room? I mean, I think now anybody anywhere can participate, and we're at an inflection point with the 2040 plan. And I think that's going to have, when we started that, we didn't know the pandemic was not. So it's a really interesting confluence of things that's coming forward to shape what development looks like in the future. But the other thing I would say is also echoing a little bit what Michael said is just the technology. I mean, the idea of smart communities and smart buildings and interaction is going to affect, I think, real estate development more and more as we go forward, because while we have a scary situation with Colonial, we know that there are risks associated with it. The rewards are vast. And I think the advent of technology and the increased use of that within buildings and communities is gonna accelerate and have a lot to do with how we develop.
Thank you. Zach?
Yeah, I think I agree with both what Michael and Wes have said. I think I'll build upon it with a little bit of a different lens. And I think, we've got bold leadership in Charlotte. I think of what Gene is doing at Atrium and what we talked about in terms of the School of Medicine and this innovation district. And, for us, one of our historically smaller markets has been life sciences. It's been centered in San Francisco or San Diego or in Boston or in Research Triangle. But what we're doing to attract and draw talent to the region through bold moves that our customers and the community are doing are a catalyst for change. And I think how we've evolved in terms of delivering fast track life science projects, whether it be for Pfizer for vaccinations, whether it be for immunotherapy, for other things that are driving more personalized specific medicine. We haven't done a lot of those things in the Charlotte marketplace. And so I think we're poised for more of that sort of growth beyond great Fortune 500 companies that want to come and set up shop here because their people want to be here. And so I think we're at a really exciting time with a lot of exciting technology but all of that centered on bold leadership, driving Charlotte forward. So I'm very optimistic about where we're headed, Judy.
Thank you. So guys, time flies, and we only have about a minute left. So I'd like to ask each of you to make kind of one last comment that you'd like to leave us with today. Wes, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo what Zach said. I feel incredibly optimistic about Charlotte and our future and where we're going. I think we have amazing leaders. I think we're tackling big questions that like transportation, mass transportation, and that other communities aren't as actively engaged with, as we are. And I think we're going to find solutions to those problems, or at least that middle ground. So it's been an incredible place to be in Charlotte since I came in '95. And it just, to me, the horizon is pretty vast. The kind of things that Zach just mentioned, that we start to pull those in and interact, I think we're going to come out of this situation a much stronger city. And I echo what Michael said, at the keynote. It's really exciting, and I'm just glad to be part of it.
Michael.
I moved to Charlotte 4 years ago from Atlanta, and so Atlanta was a huge city. And what I've been hugely impressed with Charlotte is the amount of growth in those 4 years I've been here, but also the way they've grown. And I agree, the leadership of the city, some of the things that you see and how the city has grown is really exciting. I mean, it is going to continue to grow, but it's got all the markets you need, I think, to be a complete city. And so, as Zach mentioned, health sciences and just some of the things that you're seeing in this town, it reminds me a lot of Atlanta back in the early '90s, but it really is exciting to see how it's coming together in a different way, but a really cool way. So, like Wes said, I'm excited for where we're headed.
Thank you. And Zach?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, real estate and development and construction is all about community and centered in community or people. And I think everything we're talking about is raising the bar, but it's also about being more inclusive, about how do we create opportunity as people move here, as we need to build and develop our workforces, right? Michael and I have craft workforce that we have to care for and their families. And so how can we allow the catalyst of change inside of the market, inside of the last year, be something that drives us forward and changes the face of what we do as a region to really create a better community for our people. And I think that's really the goal for us and where we head forward.
All great points. And I love to hear the optimistic tone from all three of you. And it's just been a real pleasure this morning. So thank you for your time and your thoughts and ideas and just being a part of this. And thanks to everyone for joining us this morning. And
if all of our panelists and the moderator could just hold for a second and smile, we're going to take a quick picture. Perfect.
That wasn't awkward at all, Max.
Thank you, Judy, Zach, Michael, Wes. Thank you for being with us today and for that discussion. I think, around these topics of ensuring that going forward as Charlotte develops that both technology transformation and inclusivity become driving forces for that, that certainly seems to be the direction that we should be going in. So again, thank you for that discussion. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our final panel for today's event, Innovative Ideas, Helping to Position the Queen City for Growth in a Recovering Economy. Moderating this panel today is my pleasure to introduce another wonderful partner to Invest, Janet Labar, President and CEO of the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. Janet, it looks like you're unmuted and ready to go, so I'll turn it over to you to introduce the panelists as they come in and kick off the discussion.
Great, thanks, Jack, and I appreciate the invitation to return to this Invest Charlotte event with Capital Analytics. And I'm so honored today to share the screen with some of our city and our region's finest leaders. So joining us for this last panel of the day is Malcolm Coley, Central Region and EY Private Leader and Charlotte Managing Partner at EY, Tracy Dodson, Assistant City Manager and Director of Economic Development at the City of Charlotte, Jeff Gray, Executive Vice President at Signature Consultants, and Tom Murray, CEO at the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority. And as Jack said, we will be talking about innovative ideas helping to position the Queen City for growth in a recovering economy. So before we look ahead, we're going to evaluate current state. And this question is for all of these fine panelists there. So make sure you're unmuted. I'm going to call on you, name one by one. But tell us how you describe the current state that the Charlotte region is at within the economic recovery process. And Malcolm, I'm coming over to you first.
Hey, thanks, Janet, and great question. I would probably say, if I put it in baseball analogy, we're probably in the fourth or fifth inning. I think it was, we've never experienced anything like this in our lifetime in 100 years. But I think Charlotte's resilient. There's a lot of things that goes on in Charlotte that we would come out stronger than before. We're well balanced across all disciplines of industries, as was talked about earlier in advanced manufacturing, healthcare, financial. I mean, you go straight down the list. And now with the coming medical school and what's going to bring with that, it's going to well-round the community with pharma, life science, biotech, as well as the venture capitalists and the private equity. And so I think Charlotte's resilient, and I think just the growth and the abundance of assets and resources we have in the community.
Awesome. Tracy, how about you? Current state?
So I'm even more optimistic than Malcolm, I think. You know, we've fared through this pandemic pretty well. If we look back at last year, we announced over 4,400 jobs. And if you take like the Centene CEO, when he announced, he actually talked about more jobs than we officially announced. And we've also put about 57 million through the CARES dollars back for small businesses and our local businesses. And so we're seeing a lot of that momentum continue. We haven't really slowed down very much at all. I took a quick look this morning at our unemployment numbers. Pre-pandemic, I think we're at 3.1%. And we went up as high as 15% during the pandemic, but now we're back down to 4.9%. So I think overall we're faring pretty well, and activity has remained really, really high.
Great, thank you. And we're going to come back to you a little bit more to talk about how the city has helped businesses recover. But Jeff, tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, hey Janet, good to be with everybody. You know, I will tell you that one of the things that I most respect about what happened since COVID was that our community and our businesses care about people. You would have thought initially that there were going to be mass layoffs and people were going to cut expenses. And I think the thing that most impressed me was the ability of our employers and our community to embrace the worker. And I've been impressed by that, not only in Charlotte, but across the country, and how businesses really stood behind their people. From a data-centric standpoint, I will tell you that I really feel like things are back. I mean, demand for jobs and for people is at an all-time high. And if you look at Q2 of last year, it was down about 30% in demand in our space. We're up 30% from Q1 pre-pandemic levels right now in mid Q2. And so we're really bullish about where things are, not only here in Charlotte, but across the country.
That's so great to hear. And Tom, I'm going to give you a little bit more of a platform here, because I want to talk to you about current state, but I also want to hear your thoughts on how specifically that's affected the hospitality and tourism industries, because you're optimistic about that recovery. So tell us about current state first.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly share optimism about the future, but there's a lot of recovery still to happen in our industry. And as you can imagine, we were the hardest hit industry. And when you think about the restaurants, the hotels, the bars, the entertainment facilities, places like Carowinds, and you know, just really have been hit hard during this time period. And we're the fourth largest employer segment in the community. And so 1 in 9 people in our community work in the hospitality industry. And so that has a big impact on our future optimism, and also on the recovery, is getting those folks back to work. We lost some 55,000 to 60,000 jobs like that, right? As soon as this pandemic happened. And now, while we've recovered about 30,000 of them, the last bit of the recovery has been hard. It's hard because, in part, the recovery is uneven in the tourism industry. Mm-hmm. While restaurants are now back, they are not back fully yet because of the staffing challenges that they are facing. But businesses like ours, the Convention Center, the Spectrum Center, Bojangles and Ovens, the NASCAR Hall of Fame, we also are not seeing all of our business back. Events are slower to return. So what has happened for the hotel industry is that people visiting friends and family, our leisure travel within 300-mile radius has come back really strong, and particularly in leisure destinations throughout our state and throughout our country, leisure destinations have recovered. Uptown is a little bit of a different story, where we are still waiting for our traditional conventions to fully return, and also the workers in our buildings here and returning as well, so folks can come and visit them and do business with them. So we'll see some of that starting to happen. We've already hosted conventions. We've hosted conventions that have followed the current protocols that our leaders have suggested we had, and they've been very, very successful. An interesting thing that's happened during that time period is people have really appreciated how we've been prepared for them during this pandemic as well. But you can't help but get optimistic when you look around, even just outside my window here. There's so much construction going on. The JW Marriott is about to open. The Allied Bank is finishing up. You know, Honeywell's building is topping off. Bank of America's tower seems like new tower seems like an old story, but it's a big, big story. Duke has a huge 41-story building going across the street. So we have a lot of that kind of recovery. And quite frankly, there has been a big increase in hotel rooms in the market in recent times. And some of that stuff continued to be done. JW Marriott is going to be a big help to the convention business, but we also had Grand Bohemian recently open up uptown as well. And I'm optimistic once we fully recover, the hotel industry will still be a good investment. We've always thought we were under-hoteled in this marketplace, and we think that we will continue to grow more hotel units as we fully recover.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Michael Smith kicked off the program with in terms of doing all our parts to come into Uptown and make sure our center city is strong. So powering up Uptown, hope I got that right. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of great activity going on with conventions and hotels. I want to stick a little bit more on the talent question. We have a question from the audience already, so you guys are doing a fantastic job. But if any of you could just maybe talk about, let me actually read the question here. It says, it seems that at this point, some of the unemployment benefits are stifling some job growth. Is this a fair assessment? And how can employers best continue to attract employees to their operations? So if any of you have a perspective on that, I would invite you to answer that question.
All right, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I think we are hearing and seeing that some of the unemployment benefits are holding people back. We've been doing a lot of work, especially in some of our underserved communities, of looking at where's the talent, where's the opportunity for the job, and how do we make those connections. And so some of that is what's leading us to believe that. I think coming out of this, though, and we've seen the businesses get really creative, but where you have to be the most creative is that flexibility, right? Mm-hmm. We all want to come back to work, but then how do you balance what we have turned into this new world of working from home or things like that? And so that's the big thing, I think, for employers from the perspective of what we hear is balancing that so that you can attract the right talent and retain the right talent.
Mm-hmm. Others' perspectives? Tom?
Yeah, well, I first of all, I think that the hospitality industry does a really good job of understanding that our success comes from the people that work in our industry. And so it's important to us to make sure that our employees are fully engaged in what we do. And in our organization, we talk about making them inspired to come to work every day because they know what we do as an organization matters to our community. And so I'm hopeful that that as we start recovering from our preparing for the future and dealing with the present, we continue to see particularly our part-time workforce come back. And we've kept all of our full-time workers on during this pandemic because we really knew that we had a responsibility to our community to make sure that we recover strongly. And secondly, that we knew our success comes from those folks. So I think that's an important part. I do think there's a dilemma right now, and I think we'll find out really quickly what that is. We represent 16 counties. 4 of those are in South Carolina. South Carolina has recently changed their laws around the unemployment compensation, and so we'll have a real active case of actually seeing whether or not those laws or those benefits are actually stopping folks from recovering. I feel like that's part of the challenge. I predict that there's other things that have happened during the pandemic, that people have decided that maybe their lifestyle they may want different lifestyles. They may want an employer to be more flexible. They found that they can be more efficient. In fact, employers have seen that, and particularly in my case, we've seen that our employees were incredibly efficient during this virtual environment, and particularly as we see roles like sales and marketing, and those teams have really found that they can work in that environment. But to us, our culture is incredibly important, and we've worked very hard in the 10 years that I've been here to build on that culture, and we think it's a competitive advantage for us. So we're going to really have to think twice about more of a hybrid environment where we're giving our employees the benefit of this flexibility, but also focusing on the times that we are together. So it'll be interesting to see what happens between the North Carolina, South Carolina debate, and see how whether or not that we can learn from each other and solve for some of our problems. But I think the other piece really is that our recovery is uneven. While we have big events like we just hosted the Wells Fargo Championship at Quail Hollow, was amazing to see all those folks. I'm just really proud of our city to be able to host that event, and in 22 with the President's Cup, that'll be really exciting. But we have NASCAR races happening in May. We have an incredible kickoff event for Clemson, Georgia at the Panther Stadium. We've got the Panthers starting. The Hornets are chasing the playoffs, and the Knights are playing again, right? So we've got a lot of those kinds of activities that are starting to recover strongly, but all depend on lots of people in stadiums.
Right, right. Well, and if you didn't pick it up out there in the audience, Tom's the right leader for us on the tourism front. So thanks for being such a champion for our market. I'm mindful of time. So Tracy, I'm going to come over to you, and let's talk a little bit more wearing your economic development hat and recalling on the leadership that the city provided to support so many of our small businesses during the pandemic. What do you see as those important keys for those businesses to fully recover? And then, talk about some common mistakes that you think businesses try to avoid in the process.
I think one of the big things is, as I mentioned earlier, is recognizing that we have a tight labor market, is creating that flexibility, being creative as we bring people back to work, thinking about the long term of the retention of the employees. That's the biggest thing that we've talked to people about. Mistakes going through, I don't know that we've seen a lot of mistakes necessarily. Where we have probably seen the most is just in that flood of not being flexible, right? And trying to pull people back in too fast, where people aren't comfortable, or their lifestyles, as Tom said, the lifestyle has really changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know technology in particular for some small businesses was perhaps a disruption and perhaps an opportunity. So Malcolm, I'm coming over to you. With digital transformation being proven to be paramount in solving some of these complex issues and ensuring that industries are positioned for better resilience and success, both pre-pandemic and then obviously in the pandemic still. You guys have a terrific asset here in the community. EY's Wave Space and Design Studio has been helping clients tackle some of these more complicated issues by means of digital solutions. So with your expertise and with EY's experience here, tell us about ways in which digital transformation will continue to be important for businesses here as we look to recover.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And not only businesses for profit, but we've also been able to utilize the wage space for nonprofits as well. I mean, digital transformation for us has always been the cornerstone of how we operate our business and serve our clients. Our ability and companies' ability to use innovation technology to create new ideas and scale them to solve, the complex problems you mentioned and build resilience. What the pandemic has done was accelerate the digital transformation strategies of companies. And there are 5 things, if I could touch on pretty briefly. One, how they serve their clients using, the technology and gain efficiencies and there's of solutions. As you mentioned, this happened with us at EY through our wage space here in Charlotte. And I got to give a plug for Charlotte. We have about 20 of these around the globe: New York, San Francisco, London, Singapore, Shanghai, to name a few. But to have Charlotte amongst that group speaks volume of our city. But through these design sessions, we help clients to disrupt the old way of how they operate using emerging or either established technologies. Mm-hmm. Other areas where I think the digital transformation continue to help companies is their overall go-to-market strategy on how to ensure that their teammates keep pace with the ever-changing expectations, of their clients and customers. Building operational excellence in supply chain, the necessity to build a more resilient business, using automation or either artificial intelligence and other innovative technology. Third, their people strategy, the ability to onboard new teammates, as well as empowering, those teammates to deliver at the highest value of work. And then finally, financial operation. How do they improve process efficiencies by unlocking and monitoring data to make smarter and quicker decisions while reducing, their overall, operational costs. So as you can see, digital transformation will continue to be important to the entire business community, as well as the non-for-profit world, as we move forward to the next chapter of this recovery.
Now, Malcolm, and I want to thank you on behalf of so many of the different community organizations and groups that y'all have helped to think about, ways to embrace the transformation and not look at this as, something that's going to happen to them, but how they can in fact leverage this as an opportunity. So thank you for your leadership there. Jeff, let's talk about talent some more. Remote work is certainly synonymous now with the pandemic, with social distancing and safety related measures that have forced most people into a work from home environment. As Tracy already said, there's flexibility that employers are going to need and want to keep in place. So given that your business is talent, share with us kind of your thoughts on the ups and downs of the flexible and the alternative working environments to our current and our future workforce.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there. And first off, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am thankful for the flexibility that Zoom and WebEx and other mediums like that have provided, because where would our businesses and our global economy have been without it? It helped us stay connected. And so I really value it, but I can't believe I just said that because I looked to try to get off the Zoom calls. Yeah. But look, for context, as you said, my company, our largest operations in Charlotte, we serve about 750 customers globally. We have about $1 billion in revenue in the consulting and staffing space. My point there is that we're talking to many, many different companies across all industries, which contributes to my perspective. And when you're looking at operating in a flexible and alternative work environment, especially with the return to work focus that is coming back in everyone's minds, as some of us have been talking about today, there's a lot of excitement, but also a lot of apprehension around adapting to this flexible and alternative work environment, which is not going to go away. So look, when I think about some of the positives, let me give you a few positives. And you asked about negatives, but I tend to like to look at those as challenges. Let me start with the positives. First off, the U.S. worker, in my opinion, and what we're seeing, has become more competitive from a geographic, remote, and flexibility standpoint, and even a cost standpoint, where workers are willing to bend on comp for more flexibility. And so we're seeing that across all industries and all geographies. The flexible work schedule and remote work is here to stay, as we've all talked about. And I do think it is good for the worker. And I think happiness is good for the worker as well. And this leads to my next point, which is productivity. And we have seen in our business, we were surprised by this. We were thinking existential threat because we thought everybody was going to cut all of our people. But as we continued to go throughout the year and they hung on, and I know Malcolm can relate to this as well in his business, our productivity increased in this environment, 22% on the front end of our business. And our single metric around meeting with our customers virtually, which video was not a thing before. It was weird to meet. Now it is not weird. It's the way people are choosing and preferring to buy. So I think that's very interesting. And then my last point on a positive note is that access to the technology that we've talked about has enabled some better access to buyers, believe it or not. However, it's multidimensional contact strategies. Some people are on video, some are in person, and some are on the phone. And so you got to teach your teams how to adapt and to work in that environment. And so it's interesting. Some challenges that I see that we've seen across all of our customers. Number one is safety. This is going to continue to be a top priority and mean so many different things to different companies and how they're choosing to engage with you. And so that's going to be an interesting dynamic. Retention is always a challenge in this environment. To be honest with you, the top workers and top talent have more options because of flexibility and the remote work environment. So you've got to focus on retention because you can't lose good people. Because my third point of a challenge is hiring and training is also very, very different and very, very difficult in this environment. And I would encourage everyone to think about how you instill culture in a work environment, but also the training systems and design that you need to put in place to teach your people how to build culture remotely, but also manage and train people in a remote environment. And I think lastly would be sustainability. I know all of you probably are dealing with the same challenges, but there is no white space in the calendar anymore. There seems to be less time to think and to execute. And so I don't think that's sustainable long-term. And I think we're all looking for some of that work-life balance back as days have been extended. But hopefully, as we kind of answer some of these questions, we'll get to that.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Jeff. Thank you. And sharing too much, I'm sure, but my white space is non-existent because I'm usually with all of you somewhere along the lines of my calendar, but appreciate that we're all here for each other. Let's stick with the positives, and I'm going to go towards the innovation component now of the conversation, but let's start with you, Tracy. Talk about innovation stemming from the pandemic and silver linings for businesses. What are you seeing?
It's really been inspiring to watch our community come together and come up with new ideas, find ways to pivot. Michael mentioned earlier the innovation grants that Center City Partners was working on. We contributed to that for support to our small businesses. We, had adapted this notion of surviving and thriving and wanting to support the thrive aspect of it. And it's really been inspiring. And I hope that council supports us continuing that effort as we look at the next round of federal money, of really inspiring businesses to be innovative and come up with new ways to pivot out of this pandemic. But it's also been really inspiring to watch some of our larger businesses find innovative ways to work together. In particular, I'll mention like Honeywell and Atrium coming together on a vaccination site, how to expedite that to get us back to work. And so we have just so many examples of looking around our community, large and small, for our businesses where we have come together. I tell people when we have businesses looking at Charlotte, I mean, we are a city and a community that's built on partnerships. And this coming through the pandemic has just been a great example of how we've all leaned in, and everybody on this call too, leaned in together to support the business community and help them get innovative and find ways to survive and thrive through this.
Perfect. Tom, what would you add to that?
So on the innovation side, our first and foremost was really to think about ways to make sure that our customers and our employees felt safe coming back to work. And So we've done a lot of innovation around safety and health safety in particular. Wes touched on it in an earlier panel, but we've put in something called needle point bipolar ionization systems into all of our HVAC systems in all of our buildings, and the city helped us do that by funding that, and so thanks, Tracy. And so we, our customers were thrilled to hear that. So we've also made sure that even in our older buildings, there's kinds of hands-off approach to any of the things that you need to do: opening doors, using faucets, paying your bills. So there's a real ability to do that. But we've also sent all of our team out to learn how to do business more safely. And I think that part of innovation has really not only been great learning for us, but our customers are now going to start to expect it even post-pandemic, right? And I think the airlines have learned the same thing, is that, you know, our thinking that we're healthy and safe in their planes and in their restaurants and in our bars and our hotel rooms, everyone realizes that's an expectation that customers are going to have to a higher extent than we ever have. And quite frankly, I think to some extent we've slipped on that over the years, thinking that, you know, maybe they wouldn't notice, right? And so, not my organization, obviously, but but I think others in our industry have thought about that, and so I think it's important that we keep that focus. And I think that's one of the really good things, as Jeff talked about earlier, that is coming out of this pandemic, is that we've really raised our responsibility to our customers and to our employees. But I would also add one other piece in it, and all of us have been working on this stuff together, but we really raised our responsibility to our community. And it's not just that we're a large employer, but it's really our community can't be great and can't be successful. We all know that unless all of our community is lifted up together. And we are all working on different projects and same projects at the same time and thinking through these things. But I think it's something that hopefully will never change, that it will be a post-pandemic reality for us all in the future.
Hey, Janet, and I don't want to throw you off, but let me just piggyback on something Tom said. I would look at this return to work scenario based on what we're hearing from all of our customers in two pieces. They're talking about returning to work for their employees. They're not talking about returning to work and taking care of salespeople and our access to their buying patterns. And so I think that you're going to see, you know, most of our sales organizations need to adapt 6 months, maybe a year after people return to work before some normalcy, I believe, comes back into our level of access to buildings and facilities that we had before. And that's one of the things that, you know, when, I don't know whether it's innovation or whether it's just pre-work, but we're thinking about those things and shifting part of our sales force to inside sales and remote selling in anticipation of that, some of those blockages being in the supply chain. So just my thoughts. Thanks for letting me jump in there.
Of course, no, that's a great ad, Jeff, and mindful of time, and I've got in the morning in the chat room. So we're going to do a quick lightning round close, and Malcolm, you can fold in your comments around innovation if you'd like here, but uncertainty has been one word that almost every market in the country has looked to when describing their outlook. So if you had to use one word or phrase to describe your vision of Charlotte 1 year from now, what would it be, Malcolm?
Very optimistic and leading, one of the most leading cities in the country.
Awesome. Tracy?
I would say transformative. We come, you know, we got through this, but we came out stronger, and we're even better positioned moving forward to support our local businesses, but also attract new businesses.
Tom?
I'd say stronger, and I always like to say one Charlotte, right? One city that works together to grow. I see a lot of growth in a year from now, and it can't help but happen. All the math is there, right? So I think we will continue to grow, but I think we'll be stronger as a community than we were before.
Perfect. Jeff?
Yeah, just simply our future's bright. And Janet, you'll love me for this, but forward together.
I know. I do love you for that. A little Lion shout out. And I'll just add mine in the mix, borrowing it from Tom Barkin, president of the Fed Reserve Bank of Richmond, of which Charlotte is in his footprint. But collective hustle, he said that recently at an event, and I just love that so much because it is what sets us apart here. We've talked a lot today about community, how much we care about each other. And if we're going to aim for equitable growth, one that is inclusive and vibrant, healthy and innovative and strong, we're going to do that by hustling together. So I'm going to turn it back over, I think, to you, Jack, to close us out. Thanks, everybody.
If all of our panelists and the moderator could please hold for a second and smile. We're going to take the last picture here. And perfect. I appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and let Chris Chapman take over. Come on, Chris.
Thank you, panelists. What an amazing way to conclude our event. We appreciate all of our panelists' remarks today, as well as all of you who have joined us virtually for the event. For all of you that I haven't had the pleasure to meet, my name is Chris Chapman, and I'm the Executive Director of Invest Charlotte. As a proud Charlotte resident, living and working in the heart of Center City, it has been amazing to work with you and your colleagues to put together the second edition of our annual business report. Despite everything, 2021 has been a real success. This is the largest audience that Charlotte has ever had. Nearly 600 registered attendees for today's event. And I think that really speaks volumes to what we do now more than ever. Business intelligence as a tool to attract and promote growth into the Queen City. Again, I'd like to personally thank our incredible partners and sponsors for making today possible. Blumenthal Performing Arts Center, Brasfield and Gorey, Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, DPR Construction, Fifth Third Bank, Frontier Growth, JP Morgan Chase, McGuire Woods, Progressive AE, Self-Help Credit Union, Signature Consultants, and Truliant Federal Credit Union. To reiterate once again, our team will be sharing a link after this conference so that everyone can access the digital edition of Invest Charlotte. And while Charlotte might be newly released, we have just begun research on our 4th edition of Focus Atlanta. Stay tuned for more information there by checking out our website at capitalanalyticsassociates.com or by writing to contact@capitalaa.com. Thank you all again for joining us today. To our presenters, moderators, and panelists for your insightful words, and our sponsors for supporting our efforts. Thank you, and we look forward to meeting everyone for the next edition of Invest Charlotte, or for one of our newer publications, Invest Raleigh-Durham or Invest Nashville. Thank you.
Take me where the lights are blue. Take me where the lights are blue. I need it. Take